is the spiritual key that unlocks the mystery of the Bible teaching in general and of the Gospels in particular. It is the spiritual key that explains the miracles and shows that they were performed in order to prove to us that we too can perform miracles, and thereby overcome sin, sickness, and limitation. With this key we can afford to discard verbal inspiration and all superstitious literalism, and yet understand that the Bible really is the most precious and most authentic of all man's possessions. Externally, the Bible is a collection of inspired documents written by men of all kinds, in all sorts of circumstances, over hundreds of years of time. The documents as we have them are seldom originals, but redactions and compilations of older fragments, and the names of the actual writers are seldom known for certain. This, however, does not affect the spiritual purpose of the Bible in the slightest degree. It is, in fact, quite immaterial. The book, as we have it, is an inexhaustible reservoir of spiritual truth, compiled under divine inspiration, and the actual route by which it reached its present form does not matter. The name of the writer of any particular chapter is really of no more importance than would be the name of his amanuensis, if he employed one. Divine wisdom is the author, and that is all that concerns us. What is called the higher criticism concerns itself exclusively with externals, completely missing the spiritual content of the scriptures, and from the spiritual point of view is of no importance. History, biography, lyrical, and other poetic forms are various mediums through which the spiritual message is given in the Bible, and above all, the parable is used to convey spiritual and metaphysical truth. In some cases, what was never intended to be more than a parable was, at one time, taken for a literal statement of fact, and often made the Bible seem to teach things which are opposed to common sense. The story of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden is a case in point. Rightly understood, this is perhaps the most wonderful parable of all. It was never intended by its author to be taken for history, but literal-minded people did so take it, and with all sorts of absurd consequences. The spiritual key to the Bible rescues us from all these difficulties, dilemmas, and seeming inconsistencies. It saves us from the false positions of ritualism, evangelicalism, and what is called liberalism alike, because it gives us the truth, and the truth turns out to be nothing less than the amazing but undeniable fact that the whole outer world, whether it be the physical body, the common things of life, the winds and the rain, the clouds, the earth itself, is amenable to man's thought, and that he has dominion over it when he knows it. The outer world, far from being a prison of circumstances that it is commonly supposed to be, actually has no character whatsoever of its own, either good or bad. It is only the character that we give it by our own thinking. It is naturally plastic to our thought, and this is so whether we know it or not, and whether we wish it or not. All day long, the thoughts that occupy your mind, your secret place, as Jesus calls it, are molding your destiny for good or evil. In fact, the truth is that the whole of our life's experience is but the outer expression of inner thought. Now we can choose the sort of thoughts that we entertain. It will be a little difficult to break a bad habit of thought, but it can be done. We can choose how we shall think, and in point of fact, we always do choose. And therefore our lives are just the result of the kind of thoughts we have chosen to hold, and therefore they are of our own ordering, and therefore there is perfect justice in the universe. No suffering for another man's original sin, but the reaping of a harvest that we ourselves have sown. We have free will, but our free will lies in our choice of thought. This is the essence of what Jesus taught. It is, as we shall see, the underlying message of the whole Bible, but it is not expressed with equal clearness throughout. In the earlier portion of the book, it shines through but dimly on the whole, as the light from a heavily shrouded lamp, but as time goes on, veil after veil is removed, and the light shines ever stronger and stronger until, in the teachings of Jesus Christ, it pours forth clear and unimpeded. Truth never changes, but what we have to deal with call progress is but the outer expression corresponding to man's continuously improving idea of God. Jesus Christ summed up this truth, taught it completely and thoroughly, and, above all, demonstrated it in his own person. Most of us now can glimpse intellectually the idea of what it must mean in its fullness, and much that must inevitably follow from a competent understanding of it. But what we can demonstrate is a very different matter. To accept the truth is the first great step. But what we can demonstrate is a very different matter. To accept the truth is the great first step, but not until we have proved it in doing it is it ours. Jesus proved everything that he taught, even to the overcoming of death in what we call the resurrection. For reasons that I cannot discuss here, it happens that every time you overcome a difficulty by prayer, you help the whole of the human race, past, present, and future in a general way, and you help it to overcome that special kind of difficulty in particular. Jesus, by surmounting every sort of limitation to which mankind is subject, and in particular by overcoming death, performed a work of unique and incalculable value to the race, and is therefore justly entitled the Savior of the world. At what he deemed an opportune moment in his public ministry, he decided to sum up the whole reaching in a series of lectures extended probably over several days, and speaking probably 2 or 3 times a day. This arrangement has been compared by someone, and not inaptly, to a kind of summer school, as we have such things today. He took this opportunity to summarize the message, to dot the I's and cross the T's, so to say. A number of those present naturally took notes, and later on these notes were edited into what we know as the Sermon on the Mount. The authors of the 4 Gospels each selected the material for his monograph in accordance with his own purpose, and it is Matthew who gives us the most complete and carefully arranged version of the address. His setting forth of the Sermon on the Mount is an almost perfect codification of the Jesus Christ religion, and I have therefore chosen it as the text for this book. It covers the essentials. It is practical and personal. It is definite, specific, and yet widely illuminating. Once the true meaning of the instructions has been grasped, it is only necessary to begin putting them faithfully into practice to get immediate results. The magnitude and extent of these results will depend solely upon the sincerity and thoroughness with which they are applied. This is a matter which each individual has to settle for himself. No man can save his brother's soul or pay his brother's debt. We can and should help one another on special occasions, but in the long run each must do his own work, and sin no more, lest a worse thing befall him. If you really do wish to alter your life, if you really do wish to change yourself, to become a different person altogether in the sight of God and man, if you really do want health and peace of mind and spiritual development, then Jesus, in his Sermon on the Mount, has clearly shown you how it is to be done. The task is not an easy one, but we know that it can be accomplished, because there are those who have done it. But the price must be paid, and the price is the actual carrying out of these principles in every corner of your life, and in every daily transaction, whether you wish to or not, and more particularly where you would much rather not. If you are prepared to pay that price, to break really and truly with the old man, and start upon the creation of the new one, then the study of the great sermon will indeed be to you the mountain of liberation.